Most people spend their entire lives trying to control things they were never meant to control. They try to control the future. They try to control other people. They try to control outcomes. They try to control circumstances. They try to control how others perceive them. And in the process, they ignore the one thing they actually have the power to master: themselves. This may be the greatest irony of human existence. We obsess over controlling the world around us, while remaining strangers to the world within us. Think about how much of your life is spent trying to manage external things: money, career, relationships, success, status, reputation. All of these things matter, but there is a problem. None of them are entirely under your control. The economy changes. People change. Circumstances change. Opportunities disappear. Life itself remains unpredictable. Yet despite knowing this, human beings continue searching for certainty in places where certainty does not exist. And because of that, they suffer. Not because life is difficult, but because they are fighting battles they were never designed to win. Thousands of years ago, philosophers understood something that modern society has largely forgotten. They understood that true power begins with self-mastery, not with wealth, not with status, not with influence, but with the ability to govern oneself. Because a person who controls everything except themselves controls nothing, and a person who masters themselves possesses something that cannot easily be taken away. Today, most people believe freedom means doing whatever they want, following every impulse, following every desire, following every emotion. But what if that is not freedom at all? What if that is slavery? Think about it. If you cannot resist your impulses, are you truly free? If your emotions control your decisions, are you truly in control? If your habits determine your future, without your conscious participation, who is really living your life, you or your conditioning? This is the uncomfortable truth that many people never confront. They believe they are making decisions, when often they are simply reacting to fear, reacting to comfort, reacting to habit, reacting to emotions they never learned to understand. And because of that, they spend years trying to change their lives without ever changing themselves. That approach almost never works, because external success cannot compensate for internal chaos. A person can become wealthy and still be controlled by insecurity. A person can become famous and still be controlled by fear. A person can achieve greatness and still remain a prisoner of their own mind. History is filled with powerful people who lacked self-mastery, and many of them became victims of the very things they failed to control: their anger, their greed, their pride, their fear, their desires. The enemy was never outside them. The enemy lived within them. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The most dangerous force in your life is not the world. It is the part of yourself that remains unconscious, the part that reacts automatically, the part that seeks comfort over growth, the part that chooses immediate pleasure over long-term meaning, the part that promises change tomorrow and repeats the same patterns today. Most people know exactly what they should do. They know they should exercise. They know they should stop procrastinating. They know they should have difficult conversations. They know they should be disciplined, yet they do not. Why? Because knowledge has never been the problem. Self-mastery is. There is a war happening inside every human being, a war between reason and impulse, a war between discipline and comfort, a war between the person you are and the person you could become. Every day, that battle determines your future, not your intelligence, not your talent, not your circumstances, your ability to govern yourself. Because life does not reward potential. Life rewards execution. and execution depends on self-mastery. That is why some people accomplish extraordinary things despite impossible circumstances, and why others waste enormous potential despite endless opportunities. The difference is rarely intelligence. The difference is mastery. Mastery of attention, mastery of emotion, mastery of behavior, mastery of self. And until you learn to master yourself, you will continue searching for control in a world that was never designed to give it to you. Because the truth is simple. You cannot master life until you first master the person who is living it. There is a question that very few people ever ask themselves. If you are truly in control of your life, why do you repeatedly do things you know you should not do? Why do you procrastinate when you know action is necessary? Why do you overthink when you know it changes nothing? Why do you stay in habits that make you unhappy? Why do you continue making promises to yourself that you never keep? These questions reveal something uncomfortable. Most people do not lack knowledge. They lack authority over themselves. Think about how strange this really is. You can give advice to another person and know exactly what they should do. Yet when it comes to your own life, you ignore your own wisdom. You become both the prisoner and the prison guard, both the leader and the rebel, both the person giving the command and the person refusing to obey. This internal conflict exists inside every human being because your mind is not one single voice. It is a collection of competing desires. One part of you wants health, another wants comfort. One part wants discipline, another wants pleasure. One part wants growth, another wants safety. And every day, these forces compete for control. The problem is that most people never learn how to become the leader of their own minds. Instead, they become followers of their impulses. They wake up based on how they feel. They work based on how they feel. They make decisions based on how they feel. They live based on how they feel. And feelings are unreliable leaders because feelings change. Motivation changes. Confidence changes. Emotions change. A person who depends entirely on emotions becomes unstable. They work when they feel inspired. They quit when they feel discouraged. They believe in themselves when life goes well. They doubt themselves when life becomes difficult. Their entire existence becomes dependent on temporary emotional states. That is not freedom. That is dependency. Real self-mastery begins when you stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" and start asking, "What needs to be done?" This sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest skills a human being can develop, because your brain was not designed primarily for success. It was designed for survival, and survival values comfort, predictability, safety, efficiency. Your brain does not naturally seek growth. It seeks certainty. This is why every meaningful goal feels uncomfortable. Exercise feels uncomfortable. Discipline feels uncomfortable. Learning feels uncomfortable. Responsibility feels uncomfortable. Growth itself feels uncomfortable. Not because something is wrong, but because your brain interprets uncertainty as danger. This explains one of the greatest mysteries of human behavior. Why people sabotage the very things they want. A person wants success, but avoids the work required. A person wants confidence, but avoids the experiences that build it. A person wants change, but continues repeating the same behaviors. The problem is not desire. The problem is self-governance. Imagine trying to lead a nation where nobody obeys the leader. Imagine trying to drive a car where the steering wheel ignores your commands. That is how many people live. Their intentions point in one direction. Their actions move in another. And after years of this conflict, they begin believing they lack discipline. They call themselves lazy, weak, unmotivated. But often they are none of those things. They simply never learn how to lead themselves. Because self-mastery is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming stronger than your emotions. It is not about eliminating fear. It is about acting despite fear. It is not about never feeling temptation. It is about refusing to surrender to temptation. The strongest people in the world are not people without desires. They are people who refuse to become servants to their desires. This is why self-mastery is so rare, because it demands something that modern life discourages: patience, discomfort, restraint, responsibility. Today, everything around you is designed to weaken self-control. Instant entertainment, instant gratification, instant validation, instant pleasure. The world profits when you cannot control yourself, because a person who cannot control themselves is easy to influence, easy to manipulate, easy to sell to, easy to distract. That is why self-mastery is not just a personal skill. It is an act of independence. The moment you begin controlling your impulses, your emotions, your habits, your attention, you reclaim something priceless: your freedom. Because freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is no longer being controlled by the things that once controlled you. And perhaps that is the first lesson of self-mastery. Before you can lead your life, you must first learn how to lead yourself. Perhaps the greatest threat to your freedom is not another person, not the government, not society, not your circumstances. It is your inability to say no to yourself. This is a truth that many people never confront, because we live in a world that constantly tells us to follow our desires, follow your feelings, follow your heart, do what makes you happy, do what feels right. And while there is some wisdom in listening to yourself, there is also danger, because not every desire deserves to be followed. Not every impulse deserves to be obeyed. Not every feeling deserves to become a decision. Think about your own life. How many times have your emotions convinced you to do something you later regretted? How many times has anger damaged a relationship? How many times has fear stopped you from taking action? How many times has comfort stolen an opportunity? How many times has pleasure distracted you from purpose? This is the reality of being human. We are creatures of desire, but we are also creatures capable of mastering those desires, and that ability determines the quality of our lives. The problem is that most people never learn the difference between having a desire and becoming controlled by it. A person who cannot control their anger becomes a prisoner of anger. A person who cannot control their fear becomes a prisoner of fear. A person who cannot control their comfort becomes a prisoner of comfort. A person who cannot control their desires becomes a prisoner of their own mind. And the tragedy is that these prisons often feel good. That is what makes them dangerous. Comfort feels good. Avoidance feels good. Procrastination feels good. Distraction feels good. Temporary pleasure always feels good at first, but pleasure has a hidden cost. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term growth, you teach your mind a lesson. You teach it that comfort matters more than purpose. You teach it that relief matters more than progress. You teach it that feeling good right now is more important than becoming better later. And eventually, that lesson becomes your identity. This is why self-mastery is so difficult, because the enemy rarely appears as pain. It appears as pleasure, as comfort, as convenience, as the easy option. Imagine two people. The first person exercises despite not wanting to, studies despite being tired, works despite being distracted, faces difficult conversations despite being afraid. The second person waits until they feel motivated, waits until conditions are perfect, waits until they feel ready. At first, the second person's life feels easier, less stressful, less painful. But years later, everything changes. The first person has built discipline, confidence, character, strength. The second person has built dependence on motivation, dependence on comfort, dependence on circumstances. One mastered themselves. The other became mastered by themselves. That is the hidden cost of avoiding discomfort. You do not avoid suffering. You simply delay it. And delayed suffering often becomes greater suffering. This is why so many people feel trapped. Not because life trapped them, because their desires trapped them. Their need for comfort trapped them. Their need for approval trapped them. Their fear of discomfort trapped them. And the most painful part is that they often do not realize it. They believe they are making choices, when in reality, their habits are making the choices for them. Their emotions are making the choices for them. Their impulses are making the choices for them. They are not leading their lives. They are reacting to them. Real freedom begins when you realize something profound. You do not have to obey every thought you think. You do not have to obey every emotion you feel. You do not have to obey every desire you experience. You can observe them, question them, challenge them, and choose differently. That is where self-mastery begins. Not when temptation disappears. Not when fear disappears. Not when discomfort disappears. But when you stop allowing those things to control your decisions. Because the strongest person is not the one who defeats everyone else. The strongest person is the one who can sit alone with their own desires, their own fears, their own impulses, and still choose what is right. That is strength. That is freedom. And that is why before you try to master life, you must first master the person who is trying to live it. There was a time when self-mastery was considered one of the greatest human achievements. Not wealth, not fame, not power. Self-mastery. Ancient philosophers wrote about it. Warriors trained for it. Spiritual traditions built entire systems around it, because they understood something that modern society often forgets. A person who cannot govern themselves can never truly govern anything else. Today, we admire people who conquer businesses, conquer markets, conquer industries, conquer entire audiences. Yet we rarely ask a more important question. Have they conquered themselves? Because external success and internal mastery are not the same thing. A person can build an empire and still be controlled by fear. A person can gain influence and still be controlled by insecurity. A person can achieve greatness and still remain a prisoner of their own impulses. That is why self-mastery has always been considered the highest form of mastery, because it is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Without it, success becomes fragile, relationships become unstable, purpose becomes unclear, life itself becomes chaotic. The problem is that most people misunderstand what self-mastery actually means. They imagine becoming emotionless, cold, detached, like a machine. But self-mastery was never about destroying emotion. It was about understanding it, directing it, using it without becoming controlled by it. A person without self-mastery is like a ship without a captain. Every wave determines its direction. Every storm changes its course. Every current controls its future. But a person with self-mastery remains anchored, not because life becomes easier, but because they become stronger. Think about the moments in your life that caused the most damage, the decisions you regret, the words you wish you could take back, the opportunities you missed. How many of them happened because you lacked information? Probably very few. Most happened because of emotion, anger, fear, pride, jealousy, comfort, impulse. These emotions are not evil. They are human. The problem begins when they become your master, and this happens more often than people realize. A person becomes angry and destroys a relationship. A person becomes afraid and abandons their dream. A person becomes comfortable and wastes years of their life. A person becomes proud and refuses to grow. The emotion itself was never the enemy. The inability to govern it was. This is why self-mastery begins with awareness. You cannot control what you do not understand. You cannot master what you refuse to observe. You must learn to watch yourself, to study yourself, to understand your own patterns, your own weaknesses, your own triggers, your own fears. Most people spend their lives studying the world. Very few spend time studying themselves. And yet there is no subject more important, because the person you spend the most time with is you, the person who influences every decision, is you, the person who determines the quality of your life, is you. That person deserves to be understood. Self-mastery requires honesty, brutal honesty, the willingness to ask difficult questions. Why do I react this way? Why do I avoid this? Why do I keep repeating the same mistakes? Why do I sabotage my own progress? Why do I seek comfort when I know I need growth? These questions are uncomfortable, but growth has never been created through comfort. Growth is created through truth, and truth requires courage, because once you see yourself clearly, you lose the ability to pretend. You lose the ability to blame. You lose the ability to hide. You are forced to confront the person you have become, and only then can you begin becoming someone else. This is why self-mastery is not a destination. It is a practice, a daily practice, a lifetime practice. The practice of choosing discipline over impulse, purpose over distraction, responsibility over excuses, truth over comfort, every single day. And slowly, something remarkable happens. You begin trusting yourself, not because life becomes predictable, but because you become reliable. You become the kind of person who does what they say, who follows through, who remains steady when emotions change, who remains committed when motivation disappears. And perhaps that is the greatest reward of self-mastery. Not success, not achievement, not recognition, but the ability to look at yourself and know that you are no longer a stranger. You are finally becoming your own leader. And before anyone can master life, that is where mastery must begin. There is a reason why some people continue moving forward even when life becomes difficult, and why others stop the moment things become uncomfortable. The difference is rarely talent. It is rarely intelligence. It is rarely luck. The difference is often self-mastery, because the person who masters themselves develops something that cannot easily be destroyed. They develop trust, not the trust of other people, the trust of themselves. Think about what happens when you repeatedly break promises to yourself. You tell yourself you will wake up early. You do not. You tell yourself you will stop procrastinating. You do not. You tell yourself you will change. You do not. At first, these broken promises seem insignificant, but your mind remembers. Every broken promise becomes evidence, evidence that you cannot trust yourself. And eventually, you stop believing your own words. This is one of the greatest hidden tragedies of modern life. Many people do not lack confidence. They lack self-trust, because confidence is not built through positive thinking. Confidence is built through evidence. Evidence that you can rely on yourself. Evidence that you will do what you say. Evidence that when things become difficult, you do not abandon yourself. That is why self-mastery changes everything. Every act of discipline sends a message to your mind. A message that says, I can trust myself. Every difficult decision strengthens that message. Every uncomfortable action reinforces it. And over time, something extraordinary happens. You begin believing in yourself, not because someone motivated you, not because someone encouraged you, but because you have proven yourself to yourself. This changes the way you approach life. A person who trusts themselves approaches failure differently. They do not see failure as proof of weakness. They see it as information, a lesson, a challenge, a temporary event. A person who lacks self-trust sees failure very differently. They see it as proof that they were never capable, proof that they should quit, proof that they should stop trying. The event is the same. The interpretation is different, and interpretation shapes destiny. This is why two people can experience the same setback and produce completely different futures. One falls, then rises. The other falls, and remains there, not because one person was more talented, but because one person trusted themselves enough to continue. This is the hidden power of self-mastery. It changes your relationship with difficulty. You stop fearing challenges, because challenges become opportunities to strengthen yourself. You stop fearing discomfort, because discomfort becomes evidence of growth. You stop fearing uncertainty, because your confidence no longer depends on certainty. It depends on you, and that changes everything, because life will always remain unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Opportunities will disappear. Unexpected problems will arise. You cannot control these things, but if you have mastered yourself, you no longer need to, because your greatest source of stability no longer exists outside of you. It exists within you. That is real power, not controlling the world, but remaining in control of yourself while the world changes around you. The strongest people are not those who never experience fear. They are people who act despite fear. They are not people who never experience pain. They are people who continue despite pain. They are not people who never experience failure. They are people who refuse to become defined by failure. And that ability is not something you are born with. It is something you build, choice by choice, habit by habit, day by day, until eventually you become someone different, not because your circumstances changed, but because you changed. And perhaps that is the greatest truth about self-mastery. You do not master yourself so that you can control life. You master yourself so that life can no longer control you, because the person who controls himself controls his decisions. The person who controls his decisions controls his habits. The person who controls his habits controls his future. And the person who controls his future has already achieved the greatest form of mastery there is, the mastery of self. There is a reason why the greatest thinkers in history spoke so often about conquering oneself, not conquering nations, not conquering wealth, not conquering other people, conquering oneself, because they understood something that many people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The hardest person you will ever lead is you. The hardest battle you will ever fight is against yourself, and the greatest victory you will ever achieve is self-conquest. Think about it. How many battles have you fought in your life? How many obstacles have you overcome? How many problems have you solved? Yet despite all of that, there is still a part of you that resists growth, a part that seeks comfort, a part that fears change, a part that doubts, a part that hesitates, a part that wants to remain exactly where it is. That part never completely disappears. Even the strongest people face it. Even the wisest people face it. Even the most disciplined people face it. The difference is not that they eliminated the battle. The difference is that they stopped expecting the battle to end. They accepted something profound. Self-mastery is not an achievement. It is a practice, a daily practice, a lifelong practice. There is no moment when you suddenly become completely disciplined. There is no day when you permanently conquer fear. There is no point where temptation disappears forever. There is only the decision, again and again, to choose who you want to become. That is why self-conquest is so extraordinary, because unlike other victories, it must be earned repeatedly. Every morning, every decision, every challenge, every temptation, every setback, you must choose yourself again. And perhaps that is why so few people achieve true mastery, because they are waiting for the battle to become easier. But that is not what happens. You become stronger. Imagine two warriors. One spends his life searching for a battlefield without enemies. The other spends his life learning how to fight. Which one survives? Life is no different. You cannot eliminate struggle. You cannot eliminate uncertainty. You cannot eliminate temptation. You cannot eliminate fear. But you can become someone who no longer fears these things. That is the purpose of self-mastery. Not to create a perfect life, but to create a person capable of facing an imperfect life. This is why some people remain calm during chaos, remain disciplined during hardship, remain hopeful during suffering. It is not because their lives are easier. It is because they have spent years mastering the only thing they truly control, themselves, and perhaps that is the greatest misunderstanding about success. People think success changes who you are, but success only reveals who you are. If you lack discipline, success will expose it. If you lack character, success will expose it. If you lack self-mastery, success will expose it. Because no external achievement can compensate for internal weakness forever. Eventually, you are forced to confront yourself. And in that moment, the only thing that matters is who you have become. Not what you own, not what people think of you, not what you have accomplished, who you have become. At the end of your life, you will not remember every dollar you earned, every compliment you received, every achievement you collected, but you will remember the person you became while pursuing those things. You will remember whether you had the courage to face yourself, whether you had the discipline to grow, whether you had the wisdom to change, whether you had the strength to let go of the person you once were. That is the real measure of a life. Not external success, internal mastery. Because the person who masters themselves gains something that cannot be taken away: peace, clarity, strength, freedom. And perhaps that is the final lesson. Before you try to master life, master yourself. Because life was never asking you to control everything. Life was only asking you to become someone capable of facing anything. And that may be the greatest victory of all